Wow, well, good afternoon, everybody. I want to just say, first of all, what an honor it is to be with you here today as we reflect on 20 years of 9/11. We've done a lot of recognition of people that are here in the room, but I do want to just say a couple of quick welcomes, certainly to Governor Pete Ricketts. Governor, you're the first person I met when I came to Nebraska, and I'm very appreciative of the relationship that we have. I'm appreciative of your leadership. And we're fortunate to have the governor here with us, and the duty that he's about to carry out is one of the most solemn duties of a leader to have to do. So, Governor, I know you're going to leave in the middle of my talk. I won't be insulted. I know you're going to do something more important. Former mayor, former regent, former Congressman Daub, great to see you here, sir. We've never actually had a chance to meet, but I certainly know a lot about you, and I'm thrilled to share lunch with you today. Senator Paul, great to see you, sir. Appreciate all that you do for our state and the support for our university. And Major General Al Bachelorette, good to see you again, sir, and thanks for what you do here. Mr. Sears, thank you for what you do for the foundation here, what you've done as a journalist as well. And I'm honored to be part of this amazing group. I'm not sure I'm worthy of that, but thank you for giving me the award so that you could let me come up and speak a little bit. I served 38 years in the United States Navy, 42 years wearing a uniform if I count my time as a midshipman at the Naval Academy. It's actually one of the highest honors I felt like I could do in my life. And it's given me a chance to reflect a lot on some of the things I've had a chance to do. But I will tell you, after serving that much time in uniform and having the opportunity to come here in Nebraska and be the president of your university, I will tell you, I am where I'm supposed to be. I'm honored to be in that position. I feel like I've achieved a chance at another level of higher calling, and that is to help educate our youth and the people of this state and find them a good job in this state. Half of my time in uniform was defined by the 20-year anniversary of 9/11. And I can't think of any place I'd rather be in the entire United States than a room full of first responders, policemen, firemen, medical experts, veterans, spouses, families, elected leaders. This is a remarkable group. And I think our country had a whole different level of appreciation of what this group does at the community level, at the larger level, even for our nation and the world, because of the events of 9/11. All of us have a reflection of where we were. It's one of those moments in time, if you're old enough, and you certainly remember the day President Kennedy was assassinated. 9/11 is like that. And I know we could bring everybody up and tell their story. I'll just give you my very quick version. I had just been promoted to Navy captain. I had just finished a year and a half of nuclear power training to become a nuclear engineer and start my career path to eventually command an aircraft carrier. But first you have to be the second in command of an aircraft carrier or an executive officer, and I had just started that job, and I was serving on board our Navy's newest aircraft carrier, the U.S.S. Harry S. Truman, CVN 75. She had just come off her maiden deployment, her very first deployment, and on September 9th of 2001, we were going into the shipyard for our first major overhaul of that ship after she had been commissioned some 6 years previous. As we pulled into Portsmouth Naval Shipyard in Portsmouth, Virginia, we cut a 30 by 30 foot hole in the side of the ship so we could get after one of the tanks. I remember going to work on that morning of September 11th. We were just starting to get the shipyard workforce coming in. There were no airplanes on the ship, no aviators, but we still had a crew of 3,000. So we were still a floating city at sea and about 1,000 shipyard workers. So we were busy. A lot of noise, a lot of grit. My office was right down at the waterline at the lower bowels of the ship. And the captain and I met every day at 9 o'clock, talk about the day's business. I was in my office at 8:45. I had the news on. And there was this report, an airplane had flown into one of the Twin Towers. Now, I thought that was pretty remarkable news. I had actually flown a small military airplane a couple times back and forth from Saratoga Springs down to Virginia. I'd actually flown a little tour that New York City radar would allow you to fly right next to the towers. So I had seen what that looked like just about 7 or 8 months prior to that. And I thought somebody just flew into the tower, somebody lost control of their airplane, had a heart attack. And I turned on the news and I realized, wow, it was an airliner. So I called the captain. I said, you need to put the news on. This is kind of an odd event. And it was 9:03. I wasn't with him in person, but we were on the phone. We were both watching the Today Show, and we saw it happen virtually live when the second airplane went into the South Tower. The pregnant pause, that moment of silence between two career military professionals, something that none of us would ever expect to see, was right there. And I'm the one that said it. I said to the captain, we're at war. He said, call general quarters. We buttoned up the ship. We started the nuclear reactors. We locked everybody on that ship for 4 days, including the shipyard workers. Nobody allowed on or off. Because a half an hour after that attack, the Pentagon was hit. We had no idea what was coming. We had no intelligence. We had all our weapons off the ship. We somehow found some Stinger missiles and put them up on the flight deck in case a 747 was coming at us. And we knew that we would put an aircraft carrier in New York Harbor that day. And the Navy did. It wasn't our ship. We sent the George Washington, a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, the only time in history we've put a nuclear-powered vessel in New York Harbor. Then life as we know it changed. You know, you would think this is only things that happened to the first responders in New York. But I would tell you that there wasn't anybody that was an impact. In fact, even here in Omaha, President George W. Bush was flown from the White House and brought here to Nebraska. He went down in the vault in U.S. Strategic Command, right here in Nebraska. I know many of you had impacts in your own stories. For us on the Harry S. Truman, we had friends that were senior police officers and firemen in New York City. A young lieutenant named Jay Jonas was best friends with our command master chief on the Harry S. Truman. He was inside the North Tower getting people out as a 43-year-old lieutenant in the fire department. And he felt the building shudder. And he got his team out and a whole bunch of civilians out, and they were less than 100 feet away when the building collapsed. He said it was like a tornado being inside the middle of it. He survived. He got injured, and he actually came down and spent time with us on the Harry S. Truman. Told us the details of the story. They're just unbelievable stories, many of which are being recreated in the news this week. We've had a chance to probably learn more about what happened on the events of that day than we ever knew. It was way more than 2,966 people who died. It was way more than 125 Pentagon officials, officers, enlisted, and civilians that died in the Pentagon. It was way more than the couple hundred people that died in those airlines. It was the personal story. And we knew our life would change, and it has. Just think about everything that we do is so different today than what we did then. And I knew my military career would change, and it did. Everything we did was focused on the long war, terrorism war, and we still have challenges even today. Now, as I think back to, some of the amazing work and some of the great heroes that amongst us here, and I reflect on some of the sacrifices that our first responders made, not just tied to 9/11, but what this inspiration for service means, this idea of supporting, defending our Constitution of the United States, serving the greater public. I reflect on somebody that I never had the privilege to meet, but I'm sure many of you had, and that was Carrie Orozco, a police officer here in Omaha, who was shot and killed in May of 2015. She was a Girl Scout. She worked in Special Olympics. She was a baseball coach for underprivileged children. She had a baby in February of that same year. Baby was a preemie. She didn't go on maternity leave. She was going to go on maternity leave the day after the day she was shot. She was a wife, a mother, and they lined the streets of Omaha to honor her service. And here we are after 20 years of war in Afghanistan, after the events of 9/11, and we will have and see another event like that as we honor Corporal Page. There were moments over that 20 years that I served that I think that we actually did do some good things. And some of that's been highlighted in the news. I'll tell you a personal story of how I was connected to one of the most maybe dramatic events in military history. It was about 9.5 years after Osama bin Laden masterminded this attack. 19 terrorists, groups of 5, one group of 4, to hijack 4 airplanes. Many of them trained to fly in our own country in Florida. It wasn't until 2006 that bin Laden actually admitted that he led and planned that attack. We had many sniffs at that guy. We had many opportunities to take him out, but we always had to be certain. So I did get to command an aircraft carrier. I commanded the U.S.S. Carl Vinson, V-I-N-S-O-N. If you want to know who Carl Vinson is, he's a 50-year congressman from the great state of Georgia. He's considered the father of the 2-ocean Navy. And I didn't get to drive that aircraft carrier all over the ocean. I did a lot of deployments. I did a lot of flying. But my job with commanding the U.S.S. Carl Vinson was to do what I call a frame-off restoration. Think of a 57 Chevy and doing a full frame-off restoration, but this was an aircraft carrier. As long as the Empire State Building is tall, 3,000 spaces, crew of 5,000, 2 nuclear reactors, 4 steam catapults, 5 arresting gear engines, and enough coaxial cable and wiring to go around the country 5 times. We replaced every bit of it in 3 years for a cost of about $2 billion. It's the most difficult engineering project ever devised by man. We had done it twice prior to me commanding my ship. Epic failures, over budget, over time. Carl Vinson was the one that we actually got right. We delivered it under budget and on time. So as we were finishing the project, this was in the summer of 2009, I was doing a kind of a victory tour with all the senior admirals to show them how great the ship was ready to go, and she was ready to go back into service. And the 4-star admiral, who was the head of naval reactors, so this is the guy that eventually replaced Hyman G. Rickover, the founder of the nuclear navy, he was very proud of what we had done, and I was touring the medical spaces. Now, our senior doctor on board was a guy named Chris Lucas, a commander, Harvard grad. And you can imagine this is one of those embarrassing moments. You know, we're talking about how we're going to deliver the ship. We got it all done under budget. And in front of all these senior officers, he said, "Admirals, you know, for about $1 million more, we could put a special capability in this ship. We could put a morgue capability in the ship that no other carrier will have, but they'll all have eventually. We'll be able to bury any denomination of any religion and do that on this ship." Well, of course, the admirals looked at me and said, "Well, can you find an extra $1 million?" Well, of course, I said we would do it, and we did. We deployed that ship in 2010. She actually went down to Haiti, if you can remember that event, down in Haiti, the events of that storm down there. And then she deployed again in 2011. So as you think about the events, 9.5 years after 9/11 in 2001, SEAL Team 6 launched a mission, went into Abbottabad, Pakistan, 2 stealth helicopters, got into a structure where they had been actually tracking bin Laden for about 8 months, never saw him, never had a picture of him, never heard his voice. That's how risky the mission was. They went in there. In less than 30 seconds from the time they touched the building, they shot bin Laden dead. Geronimo. Now there's more to the story, because when they took bin Laden out of Pakistan, took him to Afghanistan, decisions had been made at the highest level to include Admiral Bill McRaven, the 4-star admiral in charge of special forces, that bin Laden would be buried at sea. And there were 2 aircraft carriers in the North Arabian Sea at the time, the U.S.S. Enterprise, a 49-year-old aircraft carrier, and the U.S.S. Carl Vinson. And the decision was made based on something that had been talked about 2.5 years earlier to take him to the U.S.S. Carl Vinson. They buried him off of aircraft elevator number 4 on the flight deck at sunrise with all appropriate Muslim rites at sunrise on May 3rd. The crew never knew it. The captain, the senior medical officer, the senior chaplain, and the SEALs that brought him there were the only ones that knew. And they put him into the ocean, never to be found again. I don't know about you, but I wake up every day feeling kind of good about that. I feel good that we got some restitution. that the sailors and the Marines and the soldiers and the airmen and the Coast Guardsmen and all of our first responders, we took care of that son of a bitch. Now, as I think forward and as we reflect on what this day means to us 20 years ago, we should also take a moment to think, what's next? Where do we go from here? We have a lot of healing to do. I don't think anybody thinks we got out of Afghanistan the way we wanted to. But I would tell you, all of us that have a whole lot of experience where we've been, what we've done, our job now is to inspire those that will follow us. Inspire people to want to still be first responders, to still want to serve in the military, to put their right hand up and take an oath, to do something that's bigger than themselves. And I have high hopes. I see that in the generation that is in our campuses and what's in the future. Because we're still going to have challenges. We're still going to have pandemics. We're still going to have racial unrest. We're going to still have conflicts. And yes, there will still be terrorism, and we will still have to deal with that. But I'm thankful. I'm thankful for all of you. I'm thankful for your service. I'm really thankful to just be included, to be part of this with you in the great state of Nebraska. So take a moment tomorrow on that special day. I hope you're watching Husker football, because it'll be a day to remember tomorrow, and we will honor a lot of our 9/11 heroes. We're going to honor the Page family. Their family's going to be at the football game with us at their request. They wanted to come, and we'll honor them appropriately. But stay positive. Think about the future, and think what you can do to inspire the future generation. I had the chance to speak as a commencement address for UNL's graduation just a couple weeks ago. Largest class in history that we've ever graduated from University of Nebraska-Lincoln over the course of this past year between the spring and the summer. And I won't give you the whole address, but I'll just sum it up, what I said to them at the end. Their generation has got to be the generation that is about we, not me. And we can help guide them to that. They have it in them. So God bless each and every one of you. God bless our great state of Nebraska. And God bless the United States. Thank you all very much.